small group, like.
Well, this is kind of unscheduled since we're redoing this one.
I'm very happy to do this one again. I'm very sad it didn't turn out the first time, but I'm very happy to have the opportunity to speak about this subject again.
I know, I am too. This is such a great one.
That's funny.
Which is a very important subject for fulfilling your measure of your creation, for recognizing your full potential that you have. And that is to understand the secrets of attainment with earth, wind, fire, and water. I'm not talking about the normal things that you would associate and that for many years have been talked about the properties of earth, wind, fire, and water, and there's astrological meanings of them and things like that. But we will start by thinking about earth first. When I say earth, I mean dirt, the ground, the earth, the things that things grow from. So when I say earth, and speaking of ground, dirt, soil, tell me some things that come to your mind with that word.
Solidity. Foundation. Spaceship.
Good one.
Water. Air.
Solid.
Can you, what?
Nurture.
That's good.
Beauty.
Continue on. About life, plants.
Oh, well, yeah.
Activity.
Yeah, it's the activities there.
Home.
Home, well, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's where it grows. Life, because it's growing.
Yeah, it's very stable too.
Stability.
Stability. I mean, you have earthquakes and you have things like that, but by and by it's fairly stable. It's very solid. And
Predictable.
Yes, it's predictable. Even when there's sometimes that there's unpredictability, even that unpredictability is fairly predictable.
Yeah.
And so, dependable, yes. There are there. I want you to consider, and we've talked about Earth now a little bit, but each of you, at any one time in your life, are in a mode of existence, in a mode of being, in a mode of action that can be defined as either earth, wind, fire, or water. And as we're talking about earth now, if I were to say to you that you're in an earth mode, what do you think that would mean to you now that you have this understanding of what earth is? If you're in the earth mode, what does that mean?
You'd be very steady, dependable, and stable.
Grounded.
Very grounded, yes.
Focused on safety.
Yes, so you'd be more conservative perhaps in what you do, looking for the long term rather than the short term. Yes, other things. Family would be very important to you in the earth mode.
Kind of plodding too.
Sometimes it would be seen that way to someone who's in another mode. That earth modes were plotting, yes.
Creating a stable income.
If you're dealing with income, stability would be a very important word for someone in the earth mode.
Yeah, just kind of a steadiness.
Very good. Now we're going to go to the water mode. Now, what are some properties of water?
Fluid.
Movement.
Versatile. Can be forceful. Can be very gentle.
Persistent.
Undulating.
Yes.
Unstoppable.
It's true.
Varies temperatures.
Yes.
Continuous. Changeable.
Yes. Water is very unique. Water can assume so many faces in the pursuit of its goal. See, water has a goal. Water always has a goal. And that goal is to get to the sea. And when it falls the raindrop somewhere on the ground, maybe on a plain, maybe on a mountain, and oftentimes that particular drop of water may get used up by something and might get absorbed by a plant, they're absorbed into the soil or evaporated by the sun. But there's always more drops of water that fall down from the sky. And all of them have a group purpose together, that they are going to, as many of their numbers as possible, are going to make it to the sea. And they start coming down the mountain, little teeny drops, and they just fall, and then they congregate together, the ones that are surviving, and they get into little teeny rivulets, and then they come down into little streams, and the little streams become small or bigger streams, and then finally they come into small rivers, and then larger rivers, and finally they make it to the sea. And along the way, they might encounter things like a dam that stops their progression, and the dam is stopping them, and it may take them years. It may take that particular drop, if you could just isolate one drop that's flowing through the river, and that drop goes into the reservoir now that's blocking the river, and it may take that drop 100 or 200 years to progress through that reservoir until it finally goes over the spillway and continues down its flow towards the river. But it never gives up. Its goal is to get there, and it never, ever stops. It always continues, no matter what obstacles are in its way, no matter how long it takes, no matter what form the water may have to change into to get there, whether it's powerful, whether it's a very little rivulet, it will do whatever is necessary to reach its goal, no matter how long it takes. And it's very fluid. It's very willing to change. So whereas the earth mode, the earth, and someone who's in the earth mode, is not very changing. They have a very steady, set course that they're on that produces a very conservative, safe life for them. It's very conducive for raising a family in the earth mode. But the water mode is very changing. It can go from this to that. It doesn't matter. It will do what it needs to do to keep progressing. And so earth mode tend to not be very they could be friends, but they don't relate. They don't understand someone who's in a water mode necessarily, unless they have been in that themselves. So, tell me some things then that you would think of someone who's in a water mode. What would be some of the attributes that they would be exhibiting?
Very persistent.
Persistent, yes. There might be somewhat emotional, but that'll be more into the other next two that we're going to do, the air and the fire. The water doesn't think too much about emotion. It knows it's going to go where it wants to go. It's not too influenced by emotion too much. It wants to go to its goal, and it's willing to change its face or change its form or shape, whatever is necessary to continue forward. And it does that in a fairly unemotional way. It just does it, whatever it needs to do.
Yeah, someone in the water mode would have a lot of tolerance, a lot of patience.
That's a very
So
excellent
just
trait of someone.
keep going no matter what, with the face of many odds. That'd be, yeah.
And that's good. And the other difference between an earth mode person and a water mode person is an earth mode person is very much interested in preserving what is. And a water mode person is very much interested in getting beyond what is to something better that's in the future, what they're working for. All right. Any other contributions to this subject on the water?
Well, it would be versatile. Be willing to be versatile to get to the goal.
Very versatile, and because it's water rather than air or fire, the versatility is a versatility of abilities. Whereas air and fire, for instance, they might be versatile and also be willing to change at the drop of a hat, but oftentimes there's no substance behind the change. There's no true ability or professional ability if you're working in a business behind that change. And so oftentimes they flounder, whereas water has a background. When it makes a change, it's a change with weight behind it. All of that continuing flow that's behind it is with that change. And so there's a lot greater chance of long-term success with water's change than necessarily with air or fire's change, as we'll get into in a moment. Well, let's take air. What are some attributes of air? I mean, the air, this air right here that you're breathing.
It's light, flighty.
Airy.
It's hard to hold on to because you know it's here, you're breathing it, but how do you grab it? And you can also, when we say air, you might also say wind too. The wind that blows from the trees would also count in this for what we're speaking of.
It's invisible to our sight. We don't see it.
That's too. but it's visible to your senses.
Right, you feel.
You know when it's there, if it's moving.
There's not very much substance to it.
And yet it's required.
That's true. That is an excellent point. And we're going to go back to that. It is required. And the other ones, air. There are two faces to air. I'm sure you've heard the term airhead applied to someone. Well, everyone, and this is where we come back to the required. Air is a very light mode. And air is a mode that, yet when you're in, you can oftentimes be perceived, if you're on that particular face, there's two faces of air. One is the airhead face, and the other is the intellectual face. The airhead face is just that perhaps you've been in earth, water, or fire, and you've become disillusioned or whatever with that. You've applied so much effort in one of those areas, and something hasn't worked for you, and you just need a break. You need to be away from the pressures of the bills and pressures of the family and pressures of the relationships, and you just need to break. And your mind is shutting down a little bit. And that's the airhead mode. And that's fine. That is a required mode for all beings. There may be people and they say, no, I can be in the earth mode for my whole life, or I can be in the fire mode for my whole life, or whatever. And that might be that they may push themselves to be in the earth mode, or the water mode, or the fire mode for this long, long period of time. But if they do that, guess what? It's going to show in their energy fields. And they're going to have heart attacks at 50 years old. They're going to be dying in their 40s and 50s instead of in their 70s and 80s and 90s. Because they're not ever allowing themselves to go into the air mode, airhead mode. Airhead should not be a derogatory term, as long as it's not a permanent state of being. Because all of us need a vacation from our pressures. And when you go into the airhead mode, what's happening at that time is that you're taking a vacation from your life. It might be for 1 month, it might be for 1 year. Some people go into it for some years. It shouldn't be for too many years, because then you're getting into a permanent airhead mode that is detrimental to your growth. But as a break, as a space of time to give yourself a rest from your pressures and say, I'm not going to care about these things anymore. I'm going to just be away from them. Whether that's 1 day or 1 week or 1 month or 1 year that you need to do that, do not hesitate to know that there is a time that each and every one of you needs to be in that airhead mode.
Getting some air.
That's right. More oxygen. So that when you go back into another mode, you're more charged up. Now, the other face of the air is the intellectual mode. For instance, Albert Einstein would be an example. And that's where your air so much in your mind that you seem, to outward appearances, to be in the airhead mode. Because you're absent-minded and you have a hard time thinking about mundane things. Because you're thinking about all these very great thoughts. And your mind is so caught up in the great thoughts that you're thinking about, you just don't have time for the mundane world around you. That's the other face of the air. That face also should not be a permanent state of being. There is a time that's fine to have that concentration, but for the overall growth of your personal sphere, you need to not stay in that phase forever either. Now the last one, we have earth, we have water, we have air. The last one, of course, is fire. What are some attributes of fire? Physical fire, the flame of fire. What are some of the attributes?
Combustible.
Combustible heat.
Consuming.
That's consuming. Very good.
Power.
It can be very warm.
Warmth.
It keeps you warm.
It has a great appetite.
It consumes a lot of fuel. If you're going to keep it alive, you have to keep feeding it fuel.
Constant movement.
It's moving. It doesn't stay still. That's right.
Functional.
It serves a very important purpose. That's a good one.
And destructive.
It can be destructive. Very destructive. I haven't heard on this side of the room yet. There's someone over there. What are some attributes of fire? Shiliana.
It must be in the air mode.
Alright, so our camera person is in the airhead mode, alright. But I know she's not. But you have to be aware of it because you have to always be thinking, because I might call on you like that next week. So the fire mode then, some of the things you've said are very wonderful because they point out that when someone is in the fire mode, they're consumed by what they're doing. So for instance, let's say you're starting a business. It doesn't matter what kind of business it is. If you go into the fire mode right at the beginning, so that you're tuning everything else out for the most part in your life, you're very focused on that thing, and you're just burning, you're going to be amazed at the things that can happen. But in order to stay in the fire mode, you have to keep feeding it lots of fuel, or the fire will go out. And after a while, the feeding of the fuel, that keeping that fire burning brightly, begins to be very tiresome. So the fire mode of all of the modes, the fire mode is the least sustainable mode. Very few people can sustain the fire mode for more than 90 days at a time. Now that's not to say that you can't be excited about what you're doing still, because you can do that and be in the water mode, you can do that and be in the air mode even. But the fire mode is so consuming, it takes so much of your energy, and it's so focused, that it's not easy to sustain it more than 3 months, and perhaps for most people it's not even desirable. Certainly should never be sustained more than a year, because you will become totally burned out and you can really wipe your life out if you try to stay in a fire mode for a very extended period of time. Now someone will oftentimes have a misconception of the fire mode, and they'll think that because they're always excited about what they're doing that they're in the fire mode. That's not. You can be very excited about what you're doing and be in the water mode, which is a more long-term type of thing. The fire mode, just so we can have a very sharp distinction between these two, the fire mode is a very focused and consumed in what it's doing, so that you're actually tuning out for a time many of the other things in your life, your family, your responsibilities to other things perhaps, may take a very far back seat, not that you're going to totally ignore them like in the air mode, but that they're going to take a more of a back seat because you really want to be focused on getting this going, getting this, whether it's a new thing or you're in the middle of something, you just need to rekindle that fire again. So the fire mode is very focused on that other things are put off to the side, not because you're in the air mode and don't care about them, but because you're in the fire mode and you can't care about them if you're going to succeed at your fire mode. What are some other attributes that you might think of someone who's in the fire mode?
Brilliant.
They can be brilliant, yes, because they're so focused on what they're doing that great ideas and inspiration can come to them.
I would see him having a lot of passion.
Very passionate in the fire mode for that which you're doing. So it doesn't have to necessarily mean that they're passionate in the relationship, although oftentimes they will be at that time, but they won't be able to give the relationship as much time. So the reason that all of these things are important, the reason I'm telling you this now, is from this time forth, whenever any of the Celestial Order of Light members meet each other, you should be able to ask each other, what mode are you in? And someone can say, well, I'm in the earth or the wind or the fire or the water mode, and the others will understand what that means. And that's very important when you're dealing with relationships. For instance, if someone is in a fire mode for business, as an example, they can come to their husband or their wife, or their girlfriend or their boyfriend, and they can say, I am going into the fire mode for my business for the next 30 days. And that's all they need to say. If it's someone who's a cool member, they understand that they may not have as much time for the relationship as they normally would have during that 30-day period that they've dedicated to be in the fire mode. But they also understand that the fire mode is not sustainable, and that this is not a long-term thing that they're telling them we're not going to be able to give you as much attention as they normally would. Forever, only for 30 days that are going to be in the fire mode. And they also understand that the fire mode simply is not sustainable on a long-term basis. So even if that person wanted to be in the fire mode for more than 90 days, let's say, they simply won't be able to do it. It's very difficult to sustain that level of intensity for a long period of time. So what are some other attributes? Someone in a fire mode.
Very focused and unwavering, right, direct to the point.
Yes. Yes. Fire, fire, fire. They took fire in school.
Sort of
Lots of energy.
It's contagious too.
That's true. And lots of energy. Very excited about what you're doing. The person might become very animated. They seem to move faster than they would normally move.
Right, lots of action.
And they get more done in a single day than they oftentimes would have gotten done in a week before. Or 2 weeks, or even a month. It's amazing what you can get done in one day if you're in the fire mode. And so, understanding these modes, it's not a bad idea sometimes to go into the fire mode even once a week, or once every 2 weeks, or once a month for a day. Say that this is, say I'm going to take the first Friday of every month as an example. And that's going to be my habit. No matter what the mode I'm in, on the first Friday of every month, I'm going to be in the fire mode. And I'm going to get more done that day than I do in a normal week. That's an example. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but that's an example of a way that you can use the fire mode. So, we have earth, wind, fire, and water. These are the 4 modes that you can be in. Understanding what mode you're in. Understanding that you are the master and that you make the decision as to what mode you're in. If you are acting as the master. You see, at any time in your life, you're in one of these modes. The question is, did you choose to be in that mode? Or are you in it by default because you didn't make a choice? If you understand that you're the master of your destiny in your life, and from this day forth, I hope that you will always be making the choice each day as to what mode you are in. And now I'll entertain questions on this, or comments if you want to say something.
Well, if seeing as most of us are used to being in our modes by default and sort of passive about it, I'm interested in knowing how to, say if I wanted to be in a fire mode, but I was really feeling sort of watery. How do you create that?
That's a good question. It's not like turning a light switch on. You can't say that this moment I'm in the water, and then from this moment on I'm in fire. It's more of a gradual process that normally takes 2 or 3 days of mental preparation to go from one mode to the other. It doesn't matter which one you're changing to. But if it can happen by default automatically, but if you're consciously making the decision that you're going to change from one mode to the other, that's normally a 2 or 3 day, for most people, mental preparation to do that. Some people it may be 2 or 3 weeks for that, but that's really too long. In order to stay focused on the change, you should keep it to 2 or 3 days of time. And you just start to think about, meditate upon, what are the attributes of the mode that you wanted to go into? Whether it's fire, water, air, or earth, it doesn't matter. What are the attributes of that? What does it mean to you to be in that mode? What's different from that in the mode that you're in? Start thinking about that. And even though when you start the thinking process, for instance, let us say that you're in water and that you want to go to fire, which is very different than water. And at the time, because you're in water, you have no feelings for fire. You can't even imagine what it's like. How can I feel that enthusiastic? I'd like to feel that enthusiastic about something, but how do I get that enthusiasm? It seems so removed from where you are that it doesn't seem even possible. How do I bridge that gap? And it's actually not difficult. All you do is you start thinking about fire. Stop thinking about water. Start thinking about fire. Start thinking about what it means to be in fire. What it means to be on fire. Think about how long a term that you want to be on fire for. Yeah, the master set the limit right there. You're going to be on fire for 30 days, or 60 days, or 90 days. And then let us say that you set it for 90 days. And at the end of 30 days, you're finding yourself already burned out. Then fine. Make the decision to go back to water or some other one. Just because you set it for 90 days does not mean you have to stay in it for 90 days. Or 30 days, or whatever you set. But that process of visualizing and feeling that mode, and then setting a time that you're going to be on, start defining it. And then start defining what you're going to be doing different in the fire mode than you are doing in the water mode. You see, if you're just going to be doing everything the same, you haven't changed modes. You have to be doing something different, or many things different even. Let us say that you're working, and your normal work habit is that you get up and start work at 10 o'clock every day, and that you stop work at 5 o'clock every day. How much you take Mondays off every week, as an example. I know a strong God likes to do that. So you've got your normal course. Well, if you're going to be in the fire mode, you have to rev that engine up. So what are you going to do different? Well, in your fire mode, you're going to start work at 8 o'clock, and you're not going to stop till 6 o'clock. That's one change as an example. So you're making conscious changes that are fire mode changes. Now, just the opposite, if you're in fire and you're going to say, I'm going to go into water now, then you say, well, I've been getting up and working from 8 till 6, but now I'm going into water mode, I'm going to go from 10 to 4. You see, you're slowing that down, so you can work it the other way too. And you start consciously thinking about that. And then, again, think about the mode. Define the mode that you're in. If you're going into fire, that means you're going to be very creative. So start thinking of some creative ideas and start getting excited about that. And again, this is the 2 to 3 day process that gets you revved up to be into that mode. And it works the other way too. If you're going from fire to water, you take 2 to 3 days to get revved up to be into the water mode. Well, perhaps not going to be revved up, but slow down from the water mode a little bit. If you're in the fire to water, if you're changing from the air or the earth, the same thing. Define the mode you're going to in your mind. Think about what does it mean in your personal life to be in that mode. What is going to be different, and how does it relate to that mode of water, air, fire, earth? And we'll leave that in.
Well, are there like any kind of a symbol that we can create that would be helpful for that?
The symbol is just the picture of that which you're doing. A picture of the earth, a picture of fire, a picture of water, a picture of the air.
That'd be fun. And do they
An area might have the clouds or something up in the sky.
do they ever so they don't really cross over into each other?
No, you're always in one mode or the other. You're never in multi. You're not. Someone will say, "Well, I think I'm a little earth, a little water, a little fire." No, they're always one or the other. They're just having trouble defining which one they are, but they are always one or the other. They may not have a good definition of what each one is in their mind, but that's why this whole exercise of what you've just spoken of is important, and that's to define in your life what it means to be an earth, wind, fire, water.
Is it not possible that if you're truly living yourself totally, that you are in no particular mood, that you are above all those or in all those or something? Do you understand what
I
I'm
understand
saying?
exactly what you're saying. I know that's a very thought that
This seems
it
so
seems
human.
it seems very. Well, I know that thought seems from some perspectives to be that's the higher being, that you're incorporating all of it. But in fact, even myself, all galactics, all celestials, all at any one time are in one of those modes. And the difference between a galactic and a human being, or a creative energy being, or a terrestrial energy being, is that a galactic or a celestial always acts as the master to decide which mode they're going to be in at any one time. Most creative energy beings are in a mode by default, not by choice.
I think there's, because there's so many different definitions of earth, air, fire, and water that can be confusing. Because we have a system where if you incorporate all of them, then you become a whole. There are different aspects of our personality that incorporate all of these.
I understand that there are many systems on your planet that use this terminology, and that's why in my explanation I'm taking the physical aspects of these elements, earth, wind, fire, water, and those same physical aspects of those physical things translate into the actions and the way that you're behaving in your life. And they're not to be confused with the many systems that you have out there that incorporate these words.
And yet you could say that we are all of those things, maybe not at any one moment, but
Oh,
we are all
absolutely, that's
of
correct.
those.
You are all of those things, but only one of them can be manifesting at any one time in you. The only time that would be different is in a transition. When you are transitioning from one to the other, then during that very short transition period, you will have aspects of both.
Could you give me an example of when and how a person would be entering the earth mode?
Oh, absolutely. A very good example would be young married couple. And perhaps they've been in college and they've been single and they've been in any other mode except Earth as they've gone through their myriad of relationships and experiences and growth that they had in college. And now they've gotten together and they're thinking about getting married and settling down and having a family. They're going into, for them at that time, the Earth mode. Both of them. That's very normal when people first get married. That regardless of what mode they might have been in individually then, that they choose to both, as individuals, go into the Earth mode at the time that they first get married, and that normally continues until the birth of the first child, if they have children. If they don't have children, they can go out of those modes much more rapidly, but it normally will happen to the birth of the first child, and will continue for 1 or 2 years. It may not be exactly the same for both partners, but it will normally continue for 1 or 2 years after the birth of the first child. They stay in the Earth mode. At that point, depending upon the person, what their goals are, what their desires are, what their relationship is like, one or both of them may choose to leave the Earth mode, or survive. There are many people who will stay in the Earth mode for the entire time they have children at home.
And is that Earth mode, that's also probably like when I've been in the mode where I'm just working and eating and sleeping, no particular goals, I'm kind of apathetic about everything, nothing exciting in my life, and just kind of plodding along. That's the Earth mode, isn't it?
That could be the Earth mode. Depends upon some other factors in your life. It could also be the air mode, to the airhead air mode. You see, where nothing is important to you, that you don't really care about anything. See, the Earth mode, you care about things very deeply. The airhead mode, you don't care about things. That's how you would be able to distinguish it. If you're in the Earth mode, you care very deeply about certain things, like your family, about your security. If you're not concerned about your security, then you're in the airhead mode. If you're concerned about your security, with those type of feelings, you're probably in the Earth mode. If you're concerned about your family, about your future financial state, then you're in the Earth mode. If you're not concerned about any of those things, you're in the air mode.
What would be an example of somebody in the water mode?
Someone in the water mode would be someone who is very determined to get somewhere that is greater than where they are. The Earth mode, as an example, would be someone who they're happy with the status quo. All they want to do is maintain the status quo. They have, for instance, your typical middle class family who has their home, and they have their 2 children, and they have their car, and they're happy where they are, and they just want to be able to maintain that stability over a long term. Or someone in the water mode, they might also be in the same house and also have a wife and 2 kids, or the husband and the 2 kids and the car. But that's not where they want to be in the future. In the future, they want to have a bigger house, a bigger car. They want to be able to fly around the world. They want to be able to go into spiritual retreats because they have the money and time to do that. So they're not satisfied with the status quo. They want more. They realize they can't get more with a snap of their fingers. They realize that they have to have a plan to go from where they are to where they want to be, and that plan might take some years to achieve, but they're determined to achieve it. That would be a water person.
I'm interested in the 90-day programs to change our lives. And I'm thinking perhaps it would be possible to use all 4 modes within one 90-day period.
Yes, you could do that. Then that is something that I will reiterate again, that I spoke about last time, is that I give this to you as a promise. You can, regardless of where you are in your life right now, if you truly want to, and you have conviction that you're able to, you can change your life in 90 days. So that where you are in 90 days, who you are 90 days from now, is so far from who you were and what you were 90 days before that it's almost unrecognizable to people. And you can do that very successfully by incorporating the 4 modes. Or you don't have to do all 4. You can do 3, or you can do 2, or you can do 1, fire mode. But it depends upon you, what your goals are, and your own personality, what will work right for you. There is no magic formula that's the same for each person. Each one of you are individual masters. But yes, in a 90-day period of time, you can transition through those and do that. Each person is different. my recommendation for people would be to stay in one mode for 90 days and to do a series of 4 90-day modes where each 90-day period you change to a different mode if you choose. But don't be rigid in that. You can start out at the beginning and say that I'm going to go 90 days in the fire mode, and then I'm going to go for 90 days in the water mode, and then I'm going to go 90 days in the earth mode, then I'm going to take a rest for 90 days in the air mode, and then I'm going to decide what I want to be after that. But even then, don't be that rigid to say, you can say that I'm going to start with 90 days as my goal. Well, then if you find that you've gone through the fire mode for 35 days and you've just burned out from that, switch to the next mode and just do the next part of the plan. 90 days to put all 4 of them into, there's going to be a lot of energy in the switching process and you're going to lose some time there. I would more recommend to stay in one for 90 days. But again, you're the master. You need to decide with your higher self what's the best program for you in your life.
Is there a particular order of going from one to the other that is preferable to another? Like, for instance, jumping from water into air or fire?
There's not a preferable order. Again, it's going to depend upon you. I will say that normally when someone has been in the fire mode, not normally, I shouldn't say that. Oftentimes when someone has been in the fire mode, when they come out of it, they'll go into the water or air mode just because they need some type of a break. It'll depend upon how burned out they got in the fire mode. If they really extended themselves to the limit in the fire mode, they'll normally end up having some type of breakdown and have to go into the air mode. If they were smart and they realized that they were starting to get burned out and they stopped themselves from being in the fire mode before they actually got burned out, then they'll normally switch into the water mode. So it depends upon how wise you are in using the modes that you're in. But no, there is not any particular order other than the one that you set. You, using your own higher self, determine what will work best for you. And don't be caught into it, that you have to do that which you, because as you're going along and doing it, you might find that you have to revise your plans based upon how you're reacting to what you're doing. And be flexible enough to do that.
Are you suggesting that we should consciously choose to be in all of them at various times?
At some time in your life, yes. At some time in your life, you should be all of those. Definitely. There is a proper time and place for each one of those at some point in your life. And you may go for many, many years in a mode that's sustainable, like the water or the earth mode. But there will still come a time in your life where for your own personal growth, it's appropriate that you switch to the air or the fire mode, or both at one time or the other. All of those modes are there because they are all a part of you. They're a part of each person. Each one of you has within you the seeds of those modes inside of you. So they are a part of your being. And they are there to serve you. You're the master, and they are the servants of you. And you call them forth to be in you and allow you to be them for the period of time that's best for your growth. If you get nothing else out of this talk tonight, the one thing I would hope that you get out of it is from the rest of this point to the rest of your life, that you will always choose the mode you're in and consciously be able to state to anybody when they come up to you and say, what mode are you in right now? That you don't have to think about it because you know what mode you're in. You don't have to think about it because you had consciously chosen what mode you're in some time ago. Maybe it was a week ago, maybe it was a month ago, maybe it was 5 years ago. You haven't changed since that choice, so you're still there. Unless you just let it by default go into another one. So when someone comes up to you, they should be able to say, what mode are you in? And you should be able to say right then, because you were the master and you chose the mode and you haven't chosen to be in a different one, so you're still in that one. And if you do that, you will have such power over your life and your growth that you will be amazed at what happens in your life. So you get nothing else out of that. What I've said tonight, that the understanding of the 4 modes, and the understanding that please be the master and choose the mode you're in. Don't allow it to be chosen by default because you didn't make a choice.
So what mode are you in right now?
I'm in the water mode. What mode are you in, Andy?
Well, I was thinking, I was be in the water mode. Because when I'm in the fire mode, I think there's more passion and more, every moment seems to know it's like I'm driven to what I'm doing. And isn't that more in the fire mode? You
That's
feel
exactly
that,
right. You will know when you're in the fire mode. When you're in the fire mode, you are driven, and that is the only thought that you can think about practically. You don't have,
wake up with
the last thought of your mind when you go to sleep, the first thought of your mind when you wake up, you jump out of bed, you're so excited to get started. That's the fire mode.
It's like the cup in the water.
What if you're not purely in one? I think there's a lot of fire mode that I operate with, but I don't think that's all.
Well, you can actually operate with one mode for even a part of a day, right?
No.
And then, oh, no. Oh.
No, these modes are not that changeable. It takes 2 or 3 days to go from one mode to the other. You don't just instantly go from one to the other. It takes, the whole energy of your body changes. You're to look at your auric field and look at your energy centers. All of them, particularly the auric field, change when you change from one mode to the other. It's like looking at a projector of color on a wall, and you change that slide, and it changes a completely different color. The whole energy of your system changes. And this is a transitional thing that takes some time, normally 2 to 3 days. Some people can change within 24 hours, but that's very unusual and not necessarily beneficial. It's better to take the 2 or 3 days and make it a very solid foundation change. If you have part of one and part of another, then the only time that you can have that is during that transitional time. Even if you make the conscious decision saying, well, I'm the master, and I want to have a little bit of fire, a little bit of water, a little bit of air, a little bit of earth, it's not possible, because you can't have, they're different modes. It's like oil and the water, they don't mix, for instance. Well, it's the same. Water and fire do not mix. Water puts out the fire. You see, fire evaporates the water. They don't mix. You can't have part of one and part of the other. And if you think that you're in more than one at a time, it's because you haven't defined the 4 modes detailed enough to have an understanding of the mode that you're truly in. So if you think that you're in more than one mode, apply more effort to define the modes, describe the modes, so that you can realize which one you're truly in.
Now, is this using these 4 modes typical of galactic beings to work with? Is this like a major thing for galactic existence?
It is very major, yes. Every galactic being uses this very strongly to understand the 4 modes. It is a tremendous creative thing to be able to understand that what mode you're in, to make the conscious decision to be in that mode, to know why you're in that mode. It's not just a matter of deciding, well, I want to be in this mode. Well, why do you want to be in that mode? What's your purpose in being in that mode? If you're understanding the mode that you're in, it means you have a plan for your life. That alone is better than 99% of the people on your planet have. 99% of the people don't have a plan for their life. They're just going forward with their life. They don't truly have a plan for it. Not a plan other than what they're going to do the next week or the next month for recreation or for work or family vacations. But the actual plan for their life, well, that's beyond most people's planning. They don't think that far. If you're planning for your life, both short and long term, you'll find that incorporating to be in a mode consciously will allow you to succeed in that plan. Where you might flounder otherwise. Not that you would flounder, always, but that you might flounder otherwise. You'll have a far higher chance of succeeding with your plan for your life if you consciously decide on the mode that you're going to be in at any particular time. Define it well and then live it. And when you find yourself stopping to live it, it means time to be in another mode, so change modes. And then there's the default mode. There's actually 5 modes. The default mode is a very important mode. I haven't talked about that one. But it's very important. I've talked about default, but I haven't really talked about default mode. And there is a default mode. Default modes means that you're not going to make a decision about what mode you're in. And what happens then? Well, there's something that happens then. And if you think for instance, that you're not in a mode, you could be, well, I'm not consciously deciding to be in a mode, or you find that you're vacillating, that it seems to you that, well, today I was in a fire mode, but yesterday I was in a water mode, and the day before that I was in an earth mode, the day before that I was in an air mode. You're not in any of those modes, you're in the default mode. And the default mode is the one that you get a little bit of this sometimes, a little bit of that sometimes, a little bit of that. It's very helter-skelter, and it's very non-productive.
For who?
So there are five modes then, and I just don't include default normally because it's not an element, but it is in fact a very important mode, because if you don't choose your mode, you will go into that one, and you will be like a ship without a rudder. You're going here or a bee that's going from one flower to the other flower, and a bee is not a good example because a bee is still when it goes one flower to the other flower, he's still doing something productive. So.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, actually, the sweet spirit over here brought it up for me by reminding me of it, and what she said. That's very true, that if you're thinking that you're going from one to another with exceptional fluidity, it's because you're in default mode, you haven't chosen. And so you're getting, because all those four modes are part of you. And if you're in the default mode, each one on its own vibration raises its head whenever it feels like, and that's not progressive for you. It's like, they're forces. See, these are forces. And so if you're in the default mode, then all of a sudden, fire jumps up and you're pulled over here. And then before you can actually do anything over here, then water says, no, you gotta come over here now. And then the air says, no, you gotta come over here now. And earth says, no, you gotta go back here now. And so you're not going anywhere. You're just going back and forth between the modes, which are all forces pulling you. And so you have to not be pulled by them, but you be the director and the maestro of the orchestra, and you decide where you're going. You decide what mode you're in.
When you're in a meditative state, is that in the air mode?
Yes, if you're in a meditative state on a long-term basis, like for several days or weeks or months, that would be the case. If you're just going, for instance, to meditate in the morning before you do your day, no, that's not putting you in the air mode. You're still in the overall mode that you've been in, and meditation is simply a part of that mode for that day. But if you're doing it on a long-term basis and you're denying other things, and other things aren't important to you, except for your meditation over a long-term basis, then you would be in the air mode.
What is the? I'm having trouble for the last few years deciding on what to do. So
You're in the default mode.
okay, so it's indecision is in default.
If you will find that if you make the decision to be in the mode, see, that's an easier decision. So, for instance, people will have all these different decisions in their lives they're trying to make. Should I live here? Should I have this job? Should I be with this person? Should I do this? Should I do that? And they have many decisions. And there's so many that they oftentimes have this trouble making a decision on any of them.
Right.
And if you would just decide on one of four things, one of five things, which mode are you going to be in? Decide that as your very first decision. You will find that all those other decisions come much easier.
So you don't decide, oh, I'm going to write a book, so I better use the fire mode. You
can
decide
decide
on
it
fire
that way. You can decide it that way too, if it's for the book that's your main purpose that you're going to be doing for a long time. But it's still better to be in a fire, earth, wind, or water mode as your state of being for that time. But you can do it very well in conjunction with any type of thing that is a project of a type, whether it's a business project or a relationship project or a volunteer labor project that you're doing for some worthy cause. Then you can choose the cause first, or the project first, and then decide what mode is going to be best for you to be in. But that mode is not just for the project, it's just been stimulated by the project, but it's actually for all of your waking hours and sleep hours for that 24-hour period, and each day that you stay in that mode for that 24-hour period, that you're going to be in that mode, even though you might have chosen it just for the project, but it actually becomes part of your whole life for that time being. Oftentimes, it is a single project, like a book as an example, that is the stimulus, the catalyst that propels you into a decision as to what mode you're going to be in. And then once you're in that mode, then all the other things in your life are affected by that mode. But the actual catalyst that kicked you into it was that project, like writing a book, for instance. Once you've made that decision that I'm going to write the book, and to write the book I need to be, for instance, to start out in the fire mode, that kick in the pants to get you in the fire mode then affects all the other things that you're doing in your life. That's all from the way that it happens. It doesn't have to happen that way. Again, there's not a set rule that says that this is the way it has to be. It's very flexible because you are the master who decides that. Astrology, at least some of the questions.
Nope, and we covered them up. That's been fantastic.
And you see, Juliana, don't just pick on you. It's asked it.